Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of our quick rig series. Feel free to check out part 1 for this video, as this video right here builds up straight on part 1. We're gonna talk about how to implement hand joints to add to the quick rig. So your rig will have hand controls where you can actually pose your hands and get them into a rough position before you start sculpting on them. Let's dive right into it. Alright, so if you want to reset this rig as it is right now, you can just hit this little button up here, which is called Stance Pose, and it will reset the control you've selected. So we want to select all the controls, hit Stance Pose, and it will get us back to where we were before. And from here we can now start adding some finger joints. To be able to add finger joints to our current rig, we're going to switch to our definition tab, still in our little figure menu up here. And we hit the lock icon. It'll ask us to unlock the character definition so we can keep working on it, and it will show us all the actual joints underneath this whole thing. And now we are gonna start adding individual joint chains for our hand. To do this, we switch over to our rigging tab, then double click the create joints tool up here and make sure you have projected centering on. This is literally for the reason that Maya recognizes your geo and it tries to place those joints as best as possible within the center of the geo and not just somewhere behind in space. All right, let's start adding joints. If you're done placing one chain, just hit the G key or repeat the tool to start a new joint chain. If you feel you misplaced any of those joints, you can just easily select one of them, hit your W key to enter the manipulator tool, and then hit the D key to enter the pivot placing or the manual pivot placer mode, or the insert button on your keyboard. But in this case here, we can now just move individually around those joints and place them a little bit better if needed. If you're done and happy with your joint placements, we can just go and rename those first. In this case, I'm just going to copy our quick rig naming convention here. So we just steal quick rig characters underscore from here, and then we're going to check this is our thumb joint. So we have thumbs, index, middle finger, ring finger, and pinky. Just going to select this first joint, copy in my quick rig characters, call it thumbs left. Or we're gonna make the left first, left thumb, and then 1. I'll copy this whole thing as well, just for the simple reason it makes it easier for me to rename those guys over here. So in this case, we have a Maya built-in rename tool. You can just click up here on this icon before the actual input prompt and select rename. And then just copy your name here, but remove the 1 and hit enter. So as long as your 1 isn't selected, it will rename the second, third, and fourth 1, 2, 3, and 4 because not 1 already exists. So let's do this for all the other fingers as well. Once they're all renamed, we can just mirror those over because we're not going to do the same thing on the other side again. This is why it's important to have symmetry on, or symmetry at least on the placements, not necessarily on the sculpting details later on, but on the placement or in space of your current mesh and hands and fingers. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to just copy those joints over that easy. Just make sure you select one joint chain after the other. Make sure you're in your rigging environment up here. Just go over to skeleton, mirror joints, open the option box, select the XZ plane. Make sure it searches for left because this is what we have already here, and it replaces it with right as we're going to mirror this over. and hit apply. Just to repeat this function, you just select the next finger and hit the G key on your keyboard. I just realized a quick naming mistake here in my case, so I'm gonna fix this real quick. Once they're all mirrored over, we just have to integrate them into our main skeleton, and we can do this by just selecting our joint end here. Hit the F key in your outliner and it will show you immediately what's the name or the last link in the current joint chain for your arm. So this is called left hand. What we're gonna do here is we're just gonna select all our left fingers, middle mouse drag them into our left hand, and we can see how the connection between our finger chains and our hand joint is gonna be established. Do the same thing for the other side as well. And that's pretty much it for the part of adding the joints we need to create our hand controls. All right, don't forget to save your scene. So before we're actually able to add this back into our rig, we need to tell Maya real quick what part of the skeleton we want those new joints to be in. In your character control menu, make sure you are in the definition tab and open the little hand icon here, and you can see a nice little bone structured layout of each hand. Zoom into your left hand a little closer so we can see and access those joints a little bit better. Make sure, you can have mirror matching on, so it switches from left to right and back and forth while you're selecting those. For better control, I prefer to have this off and just do it manually for each side. Double click your first thumb joint here and click it in your viewport. Next joint, click, and so on, until your whole chain is done. Last joint will be the tip here, and do this for all fingers and both hands. To exit this menu, just click the up arrow here and it will show you the whole body overview again, and you can just select your right hand. Alright, as soon as we're done, we exit this menu here as well. You can now see that these drop down arrows are green, so this is all properly hooked up. If you want to create toe joints as well, this will be exactly the same procedure, but we're sticking with hands today. Alright, let's lock our skeleton definition back up again. And we're gonna select this button here, create control rig. It will create a proper rig setup and controls for our new joint chains here. So if you select those controls, you should be able now to move these controls nicely around, but we still have that same issue as we had before in the first initial stage, where basically our mesh isn't bound to the actual rig itself. So let's do that in our next step here. Select your hip joint, as this is the root joint where everything else is nested underneath. Shift select your character, go to skin up in the menu, bind skin, but open the option box here. Make sure for the bind method you have geodesic voxels, and for the skinning method dual quaternion. This is usually yielding the best results possible. Hit apply and close, and we should be good to go. Let's try this out with selecting this wrist here, move it around, select the finger, move your finger around, and just observe what happens. So this is pretty much it, guys, for just placing, adding the hand controls to it. There might be a here and there an issue of your weights just influencing areas you don't want to, as we can see it right here. So with the fingers, there might be here and there a weight painting issue. So if we move this finger as example, you can see how it influences the other finger, and this is definitely not what we want. But this is what I'm going to cover here in the last section of this tutorial on how to paint these automatically generated weights or make them a tiny little bit nicer. Maybe you already got what you need out of this tutorial by just adding the hands and you're good to go. Feel free to move on, have fun sculpting and posing. If you want to take this a step further though, feel free to stay on. Part 3 is going to cover very basic weight painting. Have fun.